So my practice is called conscious oncology. And the reason why it's called conscious oncology is because it really puts consciousness at this center of healing. And my 6 pillars, I always tell people, it's like not any one of these things is going to cure your cancer. But when we start to get these 6 pillars like aligned and get you detoxified and build your immune system back up, what it does is it aligns your body in a way to do what it's designed to do, which is heal. Like our bodies are naturally designed to heal.
Hi, I'm Kelley Nemiro. Welcome to the Balancing Chaos podcast, a lifestyle podcast where we'll talk about wellness, motherhood, and some really exciting things in between. My goal is to help you develop a lifestyle that promotes health, wholeness, and success. Through my conversations with our experts and guests, I hope to inspire you to live a beautiful, full, and joyful life as you navigate balancing the chaos. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Balancing Chaos podcast. Today, we are joined by the remarkable Kelley Deming, MD, the conscious oncologist, who is a radiation oncologist, inventor, TEDx speaker, transcending the boundaries of conventional and integrative medicine to evolve the current paradigm of disease prevention, treatment, and healing. She blends conventional medicine with holistic practices and ancient wisdom to address the hidden roots of disease and activate the body's innate capacity to heal. She spent years researching the underlying causes of cancer, studying the conditions that facilitate the healing studying conditions that facilitate healing in the body and learning what it means to become truly well. In 2022, she left her career as a radiation oncologist and now offers integrative oncology support services, where she uses all of her expertise to help her patients bridge the world between conventional cancer therapies and healing on a deeper level. Welcome to the show, Kelley.
Thank you, Kelley. It's my pleasure to be here.
Super excited to chat with you because I think that this is something that I've talked to a lot of practitioners about in the capacity of like healing hormonal imbalances or healing autoimmune conditions or healing digestive issues, but never really like in healing cancer. And I love the thought process around this because I'm a big believer that all disease is holistic. Like we have to look at it from a holistic perspective, and we have to look at it from the capacity of mental, spiritual, and emotional, which I know you do based on the research that I did on you and your background. But I would love to know, like, what was it, or was there one specific thing that caused you to want to make that transition from Western medicine into a more holistic viewpoint of all of this?
Yeah, sure. So I was a practicing radiation oncologist and healthcare leader, basically practiced for 20 years in the conventional space and had really worked on, the end-to-end cancer care continuum from prevention, screening through treatment and into survivorship or end of life. And I had this like niggling feeling in 2019 that something wasn't right, that I was like, I'm not sure if this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And at the time, it was very unclear. I just had this feeling like something wasn't right. And I had spoken to my husband at the time, and he was like, this makes no sense. Like, what do you mean? What would you do if you weren't doing this? And by the way, you didn't finish training until you were 32. I didn't have my first job until I was 32. Yeah, 32. And I basically, you make a great living. You work 4 days a week. You have, the respect of your colleagues and your patients love you. Maybe if you're not happy, maybe there's something wrong with you. And so for a little while, I internalized this like, oh, maybe it's me. And that if I can't be happy with having all the things that other people would want to have in their life, then maybe there's a problem there. And so I sat with this, but I didn't know what to do with it. And I didn't have the support of my husband. And then in 2020, I actually had just finished interviewing because I had been nominated to become the national medical director for one of the largest healthcare organizations in the US, and had spent like 4 months interviewing for this. And it had come down to me and this one other woman who was a researcher. And ultimately, the job went to this other woman. And I knew when it happened, I was like, this is happening for a reason. I know I'm supposed to build something, but I think maybe it's not within the system. And within a couple weeks, I had an experience that's very similar to a near-death experience, but it's actually called a shared death experience. And it's not common, but when it happens, it most commonly happens to healthcare professionals or emergency personnel who are at the scene when someone transitions, or what we would say is dying. And so that happened to me in the fall of 2020. And after that event, it was clear. I was like, I gotta leave. Something is really wrong with this system that I am part of. I don't know exactly what the answer is, but I just knew that that feeling that I had had since 2019 was correct. And that the problem wasn't with me. The problem was that I wasn't meant to be doing this in the way that I was doing, and that there was something wrong with the system. But when you're in the system, it's kind of like they say you can't read the label on the bottle from inside the bottle. It was like I was inside the bottle. I knew there was something wrong with what was in the bottle, but I couldn't read the label from the inside. And so ultimately, this decision to leave Western medicine, it took me a couple years to pull the trigger and move out because my husband wasn't supportive. So I ended up going through divorce, selling everything to start over. And it was a big deal. So that was the catalyst, was this shared death experience that I had.
Wow. And I feel like it's funny. Somebody was asking me the other day about how I had the courage to kind of like I was in a marketing career before I started doing health and wellness, and how I had the courage to make that change. And I feel like it's always something like really big like that causes this whole kind of trajectory of all of these different like major life changes. But once you get through the discomfort of it, it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much relief and it feels so much better on the other side. And it just sounds very similar for you. Like it's like the divorce and the career change and all of this stuff. But I'm guessing at this point now that you're doing this holistic practice and you have this like really defined specific niche and purpose, it feels so much different than it did back in 2019 when you had this little niggling. That gut instinct is always right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and I will say that it's still evolving because my practice is relatively new. I launched in the fall of 2023. And so it's different to have gone from being an expert and really serving at a very high level within organizations to then bootstrapping and starting something yourself, right? So there's relief. And then there's also, it's humbling, to make that shift and to have the conviction. I always used to think that I loved when people had so much, oh, my puppies are coming in to say hi. Okay. So sorry, my daughter just came back from a walk. So I always, envied those people who had such conviction about that they were doing, that they were willing to give up everything to do it. And I now have that. Like I am one of those people where I'm like, I feel so convicted in what I'm doing that it's really shifted the way that I present myself and also what I'm willing to give up to pursue what I think is right.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So talk to me a little bit about, I would love to hear a little bit about like just the difference in outcomes. And then I think we can rewind to talk about kind of the diagnosis of cancer in the first place, but just the difference in outcomes that you've seen since starting your practice in the fall of 2023 between, just this like diagnosis, either like chemo or radiation, and then you go through it versus like, I was even listening to a podcast the other day, the really famous doctor who was talking about his mom who did like a completely holistic therapy. And she went to, one of these clinics where they were doing the, checkup, and they were like shocked. They're like, oh my gosh, your tumors have shrunk by 52%. Like it's crazy. And we would never think that this would happen based on doing like only holistic type of therapies. But what's the difference in results that you've seen based on combining it and doing kind of a mental, physical, spiritual approach versus just the physical?
Yeah. Well, and I think that one of the challenges of response to this approach is that many of my clients do conventional therapy and these additional things. And so it's hard to say what is what, like what is actually the cause of what. Was it the traditional therapy that they had? What is it? Was it the holistic treatments that we're doing or interventions? But I will say I've had a couple of clients that just would fall into the category of what Kelly Turner, who studies people who have what she calls radical remissions. I've had two of those where people basically have a response that is unexpected for whatever treatment that they've done. And so one of those cases was a woman who she had metastatic breast cancer, and it had spread to her brain. And she ended up having radiosurgery, which is very focused radiation into the tumor itself. And what you expect to see after this type of radiation is that the tumor actually gets bigger initially on the first scan at 3 months after radiation. And then at 6 months, it'll usually be about the size that it was when it started. And then it kind of just shrinks over time. But you still see some dead tissue around it from the radiation damage, and you see some, scar tissue there, and it never goes away completely, even years down the road. And this woman, we were doing all of the holistic work, which my practice, we have 6 pillars that we focus on within my practice. And she was doing all of that work. And we also did a prolonged water fast as part of her holistic treatment. And when she had her scan 3 months, it was an MRI 3 months after her radiosurgery, the tumor was gone. Like literally no remnant whatsoever of the tumor, no scar tissue, no necrosis or dead tissue from the radiation. It was literally an empty cavity. And I can tell you, as a radiation oncologist, that was my, career before this. I can tell you that that is not a normal result. Like you're going to see necrosis almost all the time, which is kind of dead tissue around it. There was none of that. It was just pristine. And so that is an example of something that is totally not expected with the treatment that she had. And then I have another client who just on Friday, she has breast cancer. And basically she had a new tumor that had developed in her breast, and they were recommending that she have a mastectomy, but she already had metastatic breast cancer. And so I was asking, like, why would they recommend to do a mastectomy when you already have stage 4 breast cancer that has spread outside the breast? What would be the purpose of removing the breast? And she's like, oh, I hadn't even thought about that. So she convinced her surgeon to hold off on that surgery, and we just went for it. Like we've been working together for like 12 weeks, and she just went to have her mammogram on Friday. And she was like, I knew this. Like, I don't know if she had a dream or she had a vision that she was like, they're going to come in and they're going to be confused. And that's exactly what happened. They brought her back and they did all these additional magnification views and basically could not find the tumor, could not find the calcifications that had been there just, 3 months ago. And basically they were like, what did you do? Because she hadn't had surgery. She hadn't had any conventional therapy whatsoever. And so I knew this was possible when I started the practice, but when you start to see it and you realize that you can reverse cancer, you can make it go away without toxic conventional therapy, it's pretty amazing.
That's really incredible. Now that you kind of went through just those 2 examples, and again, like I was saying, I've heard this from other people on other podcasts. Like there's multiple stories anecdotally that share the same evidence. What for you are the 6 pillars of your business that you use on people to help them through this process?
Sure. So the six pillars of so my practice is called conscious oncology. And the reason why it's called conscious oncology is because it really puts consciousness at this center of healing. And my six pillars, I always tell people, it's like not any one of these things is going to cure your cancer. But when we start to get these six pillars like aligned and get you detoxified and build your immune system back up, what it does is it aligns your body in a way to do what it's designed to do, which is heal. Like our bodies are naturally designed to heal. And so the six pillars are diet and supplementation, which is really the foundation. I think getting the diet correct is really important, but diet and supplementation, water, because our bodies are 99.9% water if you look at the molecules in our body. Physical practices, which really ties into circadian biology, looking at, are we connecting with the natural elements on the planet? We're human beings living on planet Earth. Are we connecting with the elements that we need to nourish our bodies? So doing physical practices. Then the fourth is emotional healing. So this is both emotional processing as well as emotional release work of working on past traumas. And then the mental component, which involves both the subconscious and the conscious mind. And I think a lot of people think about the conscious mind, and either like thinking about coaching and thought work or therapy where you're talking through things. But it turns out that only 5% of our behaviors and thoughts come from the conscious mind. 95% of it is in the subconscious. So a lot of the work that we do is working on what's in our subconscious mind and reprogramming that to create what you want. And then the sixth pillar is spiritual healing. And when I talk about spiritual healing, I'm talking more about becoming aligned with who you are at your essence, because most of us are conditioned into becoming who our family wants, who the government wants us to be, who our schooling, all those things shape us into someone that is productive and effective in society, but may not be aligned with who we really are. And that can contribute to illness in the body. So those are the six pillars that we focus on.
I love that. And I think that kind of brings me into the next question. And I think a question that's going to be on a lot of listeners' minds, because I think that what a lot of people have a misconception about is that like diseases that are like these big chronic, disease, like heart disease, cancer, like that's genetic. And I got that because I got like bad cards. And the reality is that most cancer, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is actually not only genetic. There's lifestyle factors, there's all of these dietary factors, all of these different factors. And so when we think about the way that your company and the care that you're providing is addressing cancer, it kind of comes back to, okay, how are we looking at all of these different causes? Is that right? Like potential root causes of what may have disrupted the body in the first place?
Absolutely. So we're taught that cancer is a genetic condition, but the truth is that only 5 to 10% of cancers are related to a genetic mutation. And if you have a genetic mutation, it's not 100% chance that you're going to get cancer. The lifestyle factors even play in when it's genetically related. And so most cancer is related to our modern lifestyle. We did not see the levels of cancer a couple 100 years ago.
I was going to say, how much has it increased, like, let's say in the past 100 years? Drastically.
Exponentially. Yeah. I mean, so if you look at, diabetes, obesity, neurodegenerative disease, and cancer are all just exponentially rising. That you don't even have to see the statistics to know. You can look around and see we are getting sicker as a society. And this is not related to one thing. It is related to our diet. So our diet has a big impact on the health of our body or the illness that is created, but it's all the other things. So we have so much toxicity in our environment, in our food, in the products that we're, exposed to in our household. We're, basically living disconnected from nature and so technology driven that we've disconnected from our day night cycles. Mm-hmm. So we're living out of balance with the way that we were designed to live. And then emotional toxicity is at like epidemic proportions. You just look at depression, anxiety, all of those things are rising. And a lot of that is, basically projected at us. Like, so you just turn on the news and you can see there's like fear and anger and all this like division and stuff that's just common. Like, this is just the world that we live in now. And then also toxic thoughts and the, conditioning to become someone that you're not. So it's the modern lifestyle that is making us sick. And I'm not saying that you need to go back and live on the earth and, sleep on the earth and be walking barefoot, but you have to understand that we were not this sick a couple hundred years ago, and that if we want to be healthy, we need to look for the clues in nature to reconnect with the nourishment that our body needs and also detoxify all of the toxicity that we're being exposed to on a daily basis.
I think that it's so, so important. And I think that I was just talking about this to a couple of different clients of mine today. And as I mentioned, like what we're, dealing with, like the work you're doing is much more intensive with cancer patients, whereas I'm dealing with hormonal imbalance. But I think it all comes back to one of the things I was saying is that, like, if we're not willing to deal with the stress that we are as a society holistically dealing with on a day-to-day basis, such a high level, whether that is like the hustle culture, the go, 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 all of that, or it's more like emotional stress, it's comparative in nature. There's no protocol or pill or probably chemo or radiation that is really going to help. We have to deal with those things. And I think that a lot of people are very open to the idea of changing their diet, changing their supplements, because those things are very tangible. But when it comes to like what you were saying about limiting beliefs or aligning more with like who you are on a deep spiritual level, can you talk a little bit about how those pillars of your business and how those two components actually impact the diagnosis and the capacity to heal from something like cancer? Like, why do those things matter when it comes to your physical body and the manifestation of disease?
Yeah, no, so that's a great question. And this was one of the things when I first realized that I needed to leave Western medicine. I didn't know what the answer was. I knew that there was a problem, but I couldn't quite quantify it. And then I actually didn't know what the right way was to heal. And so I started diving into what makes us well and what are the things that are really important for creating vitality and wellness in the body. And what's interesting is the emotional pieces of the puzzle were the first that came in for me, is to see, oh, there is data. There are big studies that show children who experience emotional trauma, the higher the number of emotionally traumatic events in their childhood, the higher the incidence of cancer. And the biggest study is called the ACE study, and ACE stands for Adverse Childhood Events. And it's basically the more emotionally traumatic events that a child has in their childhood, the higher the incidence of cancer, diabetes, heart disease, lung disease. And I was never taught anything about that. I was never taught about that in medicine. And then when I started looking at the radical remission data, this is work done by Kelly Turner, which looks at people who cure their cancer without conventional therapy. She created a list of 10 things that are common to these people who are curing their illness without, what would be expected to be curative treatments. And two of the factors on her list are, one is releasing past emotional trauma, and then the other is cultivating positive emotions. And so one of the things that really stuck out to me was I was shocked, first of all, that I didn't know anything about this. And second of all, I said, cancer is a traumatic event in and of itself. So not only now is it likely that there's this emotional component that has contributed to them becoming sick, we are actually worsening the problem because cancer is like one of people's biggest fears. So now they get sick and then they're just afraid. And then we're pushing them through to, do all these things that they believe that their body has failed them and they can't trust it, and that they have to trust what we're telling them to do. And we're basically worsening that problem. And so for me, like, part of this is really looking at, okay, cancer, number one, we have to address the past trauma and that kind of thing, but you have to do that gently when someone's dealing with an illness where they need to heal, right? You don't want to be re-traumatizing them. But a lot of the work that I do when I first meet someone is teach them how to be with their emotions, how to process emotions and let them run through them and not either shove them down or, lose control with the emotions. And so it's a matter of, teaching people these tools so that they can experience illness differently and put their body into a state of healing. And healing comes from peace. So if someone is terrified and afraid of all the things and not trusting their body, the body doesn't heal in that state. That's a sympathetic state. And basically you're in fight or flight and you've got all these hormones running through you that are impeding healing. Like, those are the things that have you activated so that you can run away. But what we want to do is we want to lower the sympathetic response. We want to increase parasympathetic tone so that people can be in a state of rest, because that's actually how the body heals. So I know that you were asking about the mental and the spiritual, but the emotional piece is, I think, one of the biggest pieces that when you understand this, it shifts the way you think about cancer. And that the problem, my first approach is not to shove someone into some treatment, but to help calm their nervous system and help them slow it down, be able to make decisions from real accurate information that's grounded in data, and help them feel empowered and know that their body hasn't betrayed them because they developed cancer. Their body is giving them a sign that something is out of balance. And this is the invitation. Cancer is an invitation to look at what's out of balance, what is not working for your life that cancer has been allowed to grow.
I really hope that you are enjoying this episode. I want to take a quick pause and invite you to come deeper with us if you're ready to explore the root cause connection to the symptoms that you're feeling. Whether you're bloated, exhausted, maybe you have brain fog, you can't lose weight. The WBK Health and Hormones course and our WBK membership and app are here to help you feel like you are empowered to take charge of your health and understand the real why behind you feeling how you do. And we give you the methods and protocols to heal with sustainable solutions. Right now, through Labor Day, get 10% off our annual membership on the WBK app with the code Balancing Chaos, all one word, BALANCINGCHAOS, and 20% off the Wellness by Kelley Health and Hormones course, and an emailed lab review with the code Balancing Chaos 20. That's BALANCINGCHAOS 20. These protocols in the course have meal suggestions, journal prompts, and supplement guides to help you heal whatever area of hormonal balance you're struggling with. With our membership, you'll receive a library of content and new workouts, recipes, and meditations every single week to keep you consistent and to allow your body to come back to its most vital state of being. Okay, now back to the episode.
I literally need to screenshot the story that I just posted before we got on, because I swear, Katie, it says your symptoms are an invitation to look deeper at what is going on in your life that is not working for you, to cause this signal from your body to say, hey, look over here. I'm trying to tell you something, not I'm broken. I can't be fixed. I am you got the short end of the stick. That's not what it is. And so we are very aligned in our way of thinking. And I'm just curious, like when we have listeners who are maybe don't have a diagnosis yet, but maybe someone in their family does, or they're looking at this and listening to this episode from the standpoint of prevention, and they're thinking about, again, like one of the things that I said is like, I think we all could use a little bit more like nervous system regulation, stress reduction, stress management. What are things that some of our listeners might do in order to help them process through emotions a little bit more effectively and efficiently?
Sure. Well, and I want to say something about this because this is one of the things that I would love to be able to help more in the prevention space. But the truth is that this kind of work requires people to really change, and you have to have that motivation to change. And so oftentimes it's a crisis that gets people motivated. But the truth is, all of us should be concerned about cancer because the statistics today say that 1 in 2 men will get cancer in their lifetime and 1 in 3 women.
Wow.
And it's projected to be 1 in 2 women as well by 2030. So this is a problem that all of us should be thinking about. And it's not just cancer, it's the other things I talked about, the diabetes, the neurodegenerative disease, all of these things are on the rise, and that we should be looking at ways that we can support ourselves so that you don't end up in my office. And I will tell you that nobody shows up in my office and is like, I knew this was going to happen. Everyone's surprised, right? So, but it's like, if you look at the statistics, why are we surprised, right? It's like, this is obviously where we're heading as a population with the way that we're living. But in terms of emotional regulation, one of the tools that I think is the most helpful is a technique called Psych-K. It's PSYCH and the letter K. And Bruce Lipton, who's the author of Biology of Belief, is a big proponent of Psych-K. That's where I initially had heard about it. But Psych-K is a technique that teaches emotional processing. It also helps with releasing past trauma from the subconscious mind and then reprograms the subconscious mind for more powerful, empowering beliefs. But what I love the most about it is the emotional processing piece. And what it teaches is that our brain is often we go into either the right side of our brain or the left side of the brain when we experience emotions. And it depends on the person. Some of us tend to be more right brain directed, and some of us tend to go more into the left brain. But either way, when you experience emotions with just one side of the brain activated, if it's the right side, which is a more feminine approach, it's people feel like they're going to lose control of the emotions. It's like the overly emotional, someone who's probably been told, oh, you're just overly emotional, or you cry so easy. That person likely is more active in the right side of their brain when they go into emotions. And then if your left side is activated when you're experiencing emotion, those people become very logical and they basically shut it down and they push it down. They're like, we're not going to experience this. And they logically explain away the emotions. And what Psych-K teaches you is that if you can activate the corpus callosum that connects the 2 hemispheres of the brain, you basically can experience emotions from a whole brain state. And when you experience emotions from a whole brain state, you actually can just ride the wave of the emotion and recognize that, okay, it's going to go up, it's going to crest, and then it's going to come down. It's just a wave. It's just going to come up, crest, and then come down. But most of us have been conditioned in childhood to not experience our emotions for whatever reason. It's just in that family, parents didn't know how to hold space for it or whatever it is. And so we learn these techniques that are these coping mechanisms that are very effective to survive in the environment that we're in. And we usually start shutting down emotions, start suppressing. And so what I love about Psych-K is that you use the body's positioning to activate both sides of the brain. And then you learn how to expand and really feel your emotions and ride the wave. And when it comes back down, it basically is like taking the air out of a balloon. So someone can be really nervous. I did this morning with one of my new clients where she was, fear is a big thing with people with cancer. And so they don't even want to feel the fear. So then they're shoving it down. And what I do is I teach them how to activate both sides of their brain to experience the emotions and neutralize it. Because when you realize that emotions are not dangerous, that they're just providing information, and that we are emotional beings that are meant to have these, it's very empowering because you can ride the emotion, you can bring it back down to neutral, and then you can respond to something from a grounded place. So that's one of the first things that I would say to people if they're interested in really learning about how to experience emotions in a healthy and positive way. Psych K is a way to learn how to do that. The other thing is I use breathing.
Yeah. Breathing is great because it calms that like sympathetic response and you can kind of get into a more rational state before making a decision. But Psych K is something I've never heard about before. And I think that's so fascinating because I think that oftentimes, like I've heard people say things like, fear is one of those emotions that what you were just mentioning, especially that a lot of people with cancer have, that actually like intensifies chronic disease and illness because of the way that it's stored in the body. And so if you can, again, ride that wave, you're actually dealing with like prevention or helping to ease some of what's going into the condition in the first place, I think, if you look at it from an emotional perspective. Do you feel like there's enough research out there to show us like how these things work and the impact that they have on disease, or not necessarily yet because there's not enough people that are open to that side of things?
Well, I think there's a couple of obstacles to getting that data. Number one, that there's not a lot of money to be made in, let's take emotional processing or diet or any of these things. They are very inexpensive interventions. So nobody's going to make millions of dollars on doing these studies. And these, big randomized controlled studies it costs money. You need to have money to do this work. And so that's one of the big limitations. But then the other thing is that there's a lot of variables, right? Someone's not just doing maybe one of these things. And so isolating them, but I would love to see more data. I think this is one area where we could be really served by studying this, but just the way the system is designed for research, it's really geared towards, pharmaceutical drugs that are going to make billions of dollars, that they'll put the money into the research and working through this process. I think there's more of it happening where there's funding coming in from people who really believe that this kind of information needs to come out. And it's less about, they're going to make a lot of money off the intervention. But yeah, the data is lacking.
Yeah, I think that that's so true. Speaking of that, that was one of the things that I wanted to ask you about and talk to you about was the role of things like radiation and chemotherapy. I am by no means an expert in any of that. I actually don't know much about it at all. And I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on when you have a client who's going through, your system and going through your 6 pillars and your practices, do you believe that there is a place for those things? I mean, I know you said one of your clients was going through a radiation treatment, but is that something that you typically would discourage, or do you believe it can be a part of a comprehensive plan? And if so, what is the toxicity scale that people kind of like compound their disease with if they're doing one of these things? Do they need to be mindful of detoxifying further if they're, deciding to take something like chemotherapy?
Yeah. Well, so I come from a very traditional background, right? So, and I think that's not an accident for my work that I'm here to do, is that I can bridge those worlds because I understand that. And I specialized in breast and gynecologic cancers for 16 years before I stepped out. So I 100% support whatever is right for your body. So someone who comes to see me, I don't have a preconceived notion about what treatments you should do, right? In Western medicine, we have these algorithms. It's like someone comes in with this stage of breast cancer and these receptors, and this is the treatment. And, this is the algorithm that you follow. My practice is very different from that, where I'm really wanting to support someone wherever they are. If they want to do fully conventional therapy and they just want to do these things to help support their body heal better using those treatments, we do that. And then I have people who want to do a little bit of it, but not maybe the full protocol. And they want to do these, holistic practices. And I meet them where they're at. Or I have some people who just are not going to do any of it. And we're, completely out of the Western protocols. So I personally believe that this is one of the problems within Western medicine. When you come into a doctor's office and I say, because this protocol says this is what you need to do, I'm right, and you just need to do what I say, or you're wrong, right? Like, this is something that I think disempowers people. And so my goal is to have people really empowered, that when they're making decisions about conventional therapy, they understand the benefits, they understand the risks, they have looked at their values, what is important to them, and then they make decisions from that powerful place of like, I'm doing this because I believe it's right for my body. Mm-hmm. And so that's, I really span the whole continuum. And I believe that we need doctors who will do that for patients so that people don't have to feel bad. I have so many people like, I actually just got off the phone right before I, am on here with you. And we were talking about how to talk to your doctor, because she wants this treatment is making her really sick and causing anemia. And the doctor is like, well, that's not listed as the side effects, but you can clearly see that her blood counts are dropping with this medication. And when she started it, that's when the anemia started. And so a lot of the coaching that I do is how to talk to your doctor, to ask your doctor to look at this and to say, and people are scared because she's like, I switched doctors, and she's in Canada. So it's like, this province system. And she's like, I begged to get into this system. And now if I ask him to take a break from this treatment, I'm worried they're going to kick me out. And these are real concerns for people. Like, they don't want to make their doctor upset. And so part of what I do is help people navigate, like, look, this is the way that you can talk to your doctor to show what it is that you're interested in considering, and having a dialogue with them. And you have to understand what the doctor's incentives are to be able to have those conversations, right? So that's the first part of the question that you asked. The second piece about toxicity, this is a big thing. So I really believe that cancer is an imbalance of increased toxicity in the body and lowered immune function. And when we do conventional therapies like chemotherapy or radiation, you have to understand that you are basically increasing toxicity in the body even further, and you're lowering the immune function even further. So yes, it kills cancer cells, but if the underlying problem was this in the first place, you've now worsened that problem. So when you're done, you have to be thinking about ways to detoxify your body, how to restore your immune function. And the other thing for people to note is that most chemotherapy and radiation kills cancer cells in a logarithmic fashion. And logarithmic is just a fancy word to say that it's not like a straight line that it kills them and it goes down to zero. It's like it comes down and then there's this like tail where you don't kill all the cells. So an example of this type of kill is antibacterials. So antibacterials kill bacteria in a logarithmic fashion as well. And you've probably seen on a bottle of antibacterial say kills 99.9% of the cells. It doesn't kill 100% or of the bacteria. Cancer treatments are the same way. And that you can ask your oncologist there. So anyone who, is receiving cancer treatment, you can ask your doctor and they will confirm, yes, this is true. And the reason why that this is acceptable is because when you get down to this really low level of what the doctor is going to say, yeah, we bring the cancer cells down to, it takes about 1 million cells to see a centimeter of disease on a scan. But you could have 100 cells, you could have 1,000 cells, you could have 10,000 cells and not see it on a scan. And the idea is that the immune system is going to take care of those last cells that are left behind. But what have we done? We've lowered the immune function. So it's like, you just have to know how these treatments work, and then be proactive that when you finish, you really want to be detoxifying your body. You want to be building your immune system. You want to start to restore this balance. And it's going to take a little bit longer after these treatments because you've shifted things even further in the direction that they were a problem in the first place.
I think that is so fascinating. And I love the way that you simplify that for people. Like, this is kind of the root cause, like on a general basis for cancer: lowered immune function, raised toxicity. And if we can manage those things, whether you're doing like the radiation and the chemo or not, then you have better outcomes. And so again, I want to look at that from the standpoint for those people who are listening of prevention and think about, okay, if I'm trying to not be one of the statistical numbers of 1 in 3 as a woman, what am I doing in my day-to-day life to lower my toxicity and to raise my immune system?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I was on another call yesterday, and this was like the same question. He said, okay, I'm 30 years old, I'm, doing all the things, but how do I lower my risk? And so I think the first thing is looking at the way that we're eating, and it's simple things. So things that all of us know, right? So the first thing is processed food. So eliminating processed food because it is toxic. It is making us sick. Also, sugar. Sugar is inflammatory. Sugar is toxic. And eliminating that from your diet is really important in terms of lowering inflammation in the body.
Is it true that cancer cells thrive on sugar? Is that
correct? So that comes from the work of Otto Warburg. So it's called the Warburg effect, but basically it's this idea that cancer is a metabolic condition. So you've probably heard a lot about mitochondria, and health is related to the health of our mitochondria, which are like the powerhouses in our cells. And what Otto Warburg showed was that the hallmark of cancer cells is that they're using a different type of metabolism because they don't have healthy mitochondria. They either have deficient or dysfunctional mitochondria. And when you don't have healthy mitochondria, you can't do the typical metabolism that our cells are designed to do, which is called oxidative phosphorylation. What happens is that when you're not able to use oxidative phosphorylation for metabolism in the cells, you convert to something called glycolysis or fermentation. And fermentation exclusively uses sugar as its fuel, so glucose. And so cancer cells, by definition, are using glucose as their primary fuel source. And this is why we use PET scans to diagnose cancer. We inject a radio-labeled sugar into the body, and the cells that are taking up the sugar are the cancer cells, because basically they are using fermentation and they're using an extraordinary amount of sugar compared to cells that are using oxidative phosphorylation. And this is why tumors light up on a PET scan, is because of this Warburg effect, and that cancer cells are fueled by glucose. It turns out that glutamine is also another fuel for cancer cells, but the primary source is glucose. And so reducing carbohydrates and sugar in our diet is definitely beneficial for cancer prevention and also treatment.
I think that's so fascinating. So reducing sugar, is there anything else nuanced about diet that people should be aware of?
Well, I think that the timing of our eating is important, and thinking about, we're eating at all hours of the night, and we're doing these things that are putting our bodies out of balance with what they're designed to do. So when we're eating, let's say in the evening, we're suppressing melatonin, because when you eat, it raises insulin, right? The response to eating is to have insulin secreted, and insulin shuts off melatonin production. So melatonin is a very powerful antioxidant in addition to being important for our sleep. So with our eating, if we end up eating late at night, this can be something that not only disrupts our sleep, which can affect our health, but it also decreases melatonin, which can have ramifications on our immune system and development of cancer and other illnesses as well. So I think timing of eating is important. I think the other thing to remember is that our bodies don't heal when we're eating. Our bodies heal when they're in a fasted state.
Oh, and that's why you do the water fast.
Yes. Well, so just intermittent fasting in general is beneficial to our body because it gives a chance, for my clients, I recommend once a week doing a 24-hour fast. And then we also work on, narrowing the windows each day so that every day they're getting periods where they're doing repair in the body and the healing. And then one day without any food to have a 24-hour period for that. But then water fasting takes it to the next level, because when you water fast, you end up going into autophagy, where your body starts eating the least healthy cells. And what are the least healthy cells? The cancer cells. So it starts eating the cells that are not healthy. And this is a way to preferentially start killing your cancer cells with your own body. You end up eating it, and it detoxifies. So a prolonged water fast is a very powerful way to detoxify the toxins that are in the fat. Toxicity is stored in the fat in the body. And so a prolonged water fast allows you to eliminate that.
Okay. I love that. I think that that's super interesting, especially for people, again, like who have like a family member or something who's going through this. Like, I never knew that there was another way besides like radiation or chemo to kill those cells. So that's fascinating to me. Besides food, when it comes to toxicity, I think that for the sake of our listeners who are listening for, again, cancer prevention, or even if they're listening for hormonal imbalances, can you talk a little bit about other ways that we accumulate toxins, whether that, like, what should people be looking for in their products? What should people be looking for, or where should they start, so that it doesn't become super overwhelming and scary?
Yeah. Well, I think this is part of the problem, that I think it becomes really overwhelming. When you start looking, then you're like, oh, wow, I just need to sell everything I own and start over. And what I say to people, because I've gone through this own journey myself, where, I was using all the things, and I was a cancer doctor, and I was using things that are, not good for me. But there's some simple things that we can start to do, like not wearing sunglasses.
What?
So it turns out that sunglasses, so we are designed to perceive the sun through our eyes.
Right.
And that sends a signal to produce melanin in the body, which gives us like a nice tan and prevents sunburns and skin cancer. When you wear sunglasses all of the time, you basically are blocking that input. And so sunburns, skin cancer have increased, right? So you would think that like when we have sunglasses and use sunscreen kind of falls into the same category, that when we started using these, that skin cancer rates should have been declining, but that is not the case. They're going up. So wearing sunglasses is actually sending the signal to your body that there's no sun. And then you basically if you go out in the sun, then you get sunburn, and then people put sunscreen on. But the truth is, our bodies are designed to have sun. Sun is good for vitamin D. It's good for the, blue light at the right times of the day is important for our mitochondrial function as well. And so we're basically changing the inputs into our body. And so one of the things that's simple that you can do is stop wearing your sunglasses all day. Like I do wear sunglasses if I go to drive, but I don't wear them just all the time now, because when I go out in the sun, I want to produce melanin and be able to get out in the sun and get my vitamin D without burning. And then the same thing with sunscreen, that if we're wearing sunscreen, we're not getting the vitamin D that we need. Mm-hmm. And so you'll hear a lot of the experts in this area now talking about you should spend as much time as you can out in the sun without burning. And, that is true. I agree with that. I do think that you want to be mindful as you start to spend more time out in the sun without sunscreen. And there's an app called D-Minder, which can help people, regulate and say, okay, I'm getting enough vitamin D without burning, and you can set a timer, and then you just basically increase your time outside. But the sun is a nutrient for us. The sun structures the water in our cells. It sends the signal to regulate our circadian biology. So those are just two simple things that young people don't know, right? And they're probably slathering their skin with sunscreen every single day in your skincare routine and all of that. Not only is it another toxicity that you're putting into your system, but it's also blocking you from getting the nutrients that you need from the sun.
I am laughing right now because my husband and I have this debate, because he's like, you are going to have the most wrinkled, weathered shoulders, because you go out in the sun and you don't put all the sunscreen on. And I'm like, I'm just not a believer in slathering myself with a chemical to prevent something that we were meant to absorb. And it's just funny hearing you say that, because I truly do believe that it's something that we're so scared of, but we were never meant to be afraid of the sun the way that we are.
Well, and also wrinkles related to the sun has to do with our diet. If you're eating a lot of carbohydrates and going in the sun, you're more likely to burn.
A wrinkle and burn.
So eating a lower carbohydrate diet also helps with that. But look at my skin. I'm 50 years old. I don't use any sunscreen, none. Yeah. And I'm out in the sun all the time. So, and no Botox, no nothing. The only thing I use on my skin is castor oil. That's
wow. That's incredible. No, I would have thought you were way younger than that. That's amazing. So I feel like this episode has packed so much information, Katie, that people would never have expected. I think that oftentimes, you'll hear the same old story or things about health, and especially about prevention, but you have so much incredible advice and knowledge, cancer or not. And so when it comes to where people can find you or learn more from you, or if they are struggling and want to work with you, where can people find you?
Sure. So my website is katiedeming.com, and I work both with people in prevention as well as treatment of cancer. And then also I have a podcast called Born to Heal. And my podcast shares my story of leaving Western medicine. And then also I bring on guests to teach me and my audience all the things that I wish I had been taught in medical school that I think is important for us to know to become healthy and protect ourselves.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your wealth of knowledge. We're so grateful. I will link everything that Katie just shared in the show notes. And thank you again for your time.
Thank you for having me.
I really hope that you enjoyed that episode. You can follow me on Instagram at Wellness by Kelley, or head over to our website, wellnessbykelley.com. Sign up now for the Wellness by Kelley 7-day free trial on our app, or head over to our course. And now get 20% off the course or 10% off of the membership with the code Balancing Chaos, all one word, BALANCINGCHAOS. In our course, you'll get access to an emailed lab review plus protocols built out to help you heal with whatever hormonal imbalance you're struggling with. With our membership, you'll receive a library of content with our app with low-impact workouts, blood sugar balancing recipes, and mindfulness meditations, all designed to help you balance your hormones and help you feel like you are living your most beautiful, joyful, and vital life. If you like the show, please leave a rating and review. That is the best way to help the show grow and get to more listeners. We hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next week.